Hello again, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Francesa podcast, part of the Bet Rivers Network. We come to you on this Football Friday program. Wild card weekend, 2 games on Saturday, 3 games on Sunday, and then the Houston Pittsburgh game on Monday night to culminate the weekend. Buys for the two number one seeds, which are number one seeds that are not prototypical number one seeds, meaning that there's more doubt about them than normal because they haven't been there, they haven't done that, they don't have the usual cachet that a number one seed would have, like a Kansas City would have, or the Ravens would have, as an example, on a given year. So that's, of course, Seattle in the NFC and Sean Payton in Denver uh, in the AFC. Now, I've posed this question a lot. Would you rather have, you have to take both. Would you take teams that are going to have to play on the road that have big time quarterbacks, the Bills with the best quarterback in action, the only one of this one that's a real, you know, first echelon. Stafford's close to that first echelon. He's the number two quarterback. He's the MVP this year. So if you want to include him, okay. But he would be after Burrow and after Lamar and after Mahomes and obviously Josh. Um, After that, you have a lot of questions at quarterback. Uh, Guys who have had resurgences, guys who are surprises, guys who there's been great expectations for. Um, would you take Buffalo and the Rams and knowing they're going to have to travel it on the road versus the one seeds, Seattle and Denver? I would take Buffalo and the Rams to get to the Super Bowl. I would take those two. You got to take the tandem of the Rams and the Bills. We're going to have to both travel it on the road versus the one seeds, Seattle. And now history's on your side, less so than in the old days where one seeds used to be dominant. There was a time in the NFC where the one seeds were just almost automatic. That's a long time ago now. The one seeds are not that way anymore. Um, Injuries critical, obviously. You know, is Trent Williams going to be healthy? Is Adams going to be healthy for the Rams? Is Lane Johnson going to be healthy for the Eagles? Go down the list. Critical guys on every team. What about Love and his concussion, etc.? So injuries this part of the time of year, and especially this season, have played an enormous factor. Now, before I get into the games, let me update you on the coaching situations. And it all begins with Harbaugh. You heard what his brother said. His brother said, "Hey, I want him in the NFC." Obviously, they don't want to be against each other. Um, Number two, he said he's going to coach next year, which goes without any big surprise. And obviously, he has become the heavy prized possession out there, and it makes sense for a lot of the guys to wait. It makes sense for Harbaugh to wait until after this season weekend is over. Let's see what happens with Green Bay. Let's see what happens in certain spots, and then you can get a better grip on things. Now, I have told you for months now. I did not know if Harbaugh was going. I didn't know if they weren't going to make the playoffs. I didn't know that they were going to miss a field goal. Um, I didn't know if the coach and he would part ways. I didn't know any of that stuff. But what I told you even months ago was, should Harbaugh be made available in what I painted as an Andy Reid scenario, the Giants could not miss. Now, there's a couple of things about that. There's a lot of talk about the idea that Harbaugh won't wanna work with a standing general manager. I don't know that to be the case. You don't know that to be the case. They have to work that out themselves. Number 2, the Harbaugh staff is going to be very expensive. New York State's a heavily taxed state. Some places are not. Tennessee's not. Obviously, Miami, if they're interested in Harbaugh, or Tampa, if they're interested in Harbaugh, they're not. Now, Harbaugh is not an offensive or a defensive coordinator. He is a special teams coach, which means he hires and would have premium and high-priced offensive and defensive coordinators. Helps the staff, allows him to do the job that he really wants to do, which is to be the head coach and the detail guy, which he will do to the umpteenth degree. But he's going to want a lot of money. His assistants are going to want a lot of money. His staff's going to be a very expensive staff. That goes without any saying. And if they make the Giants compensate them for what would have been in a state that doesn't have a state income tax, it's even more money. The Giants can't make this about money. They have an opportunity here to grab a proven top of the line coach that they never have to think about for the next decade, barring some illness or something. He's a detail guy. He's a proven winner. Uh, he makes so much sense. It's a no-brainer, and the Giants have a chance to really turn it around. Plus, I think he wants to go to a place where the quarterback situation is settled, and one of the few places where it is settled is the Giants. So I think that plays into it. Elsewhere, there are a tremendous amount of vacancies for defensive coordinators. There are teams that want to either keep their coach and upgrade the defensive coordinator position, or will have openings for defensive coordinators when they make head coaching decisions. Flores will not sign a contract as a defensive coordinator because if he does, then he would not be able to make a lateral move, which would be a very dumb move on his part because there'll be places where he's going to be offered $5 million to be the defensive coordinator. Will he be offered to be a head coach? His situation is still murky because of the contract situation. That's the only reason, but I would think the answer is yes. I think he's a top candidate. I think either Shula or Minter will wind up in Baltimore. And obviously everything falls where after Harbaugh falls. And I would think, despite the Rooney Rule and everything else, I don't think it will be a long time before Harbaugh makes a decision. And I think it's the Giants' job to win. Don't let him out of the room. Get the deal done. It's not about money. It's about opportunity, and hopefully they will get that done after the weekend. Now, there is a lot of parity in the playoffs this year. There is not a great team in the playoffs this year. I thought the Rams might hit the playoffs as a top team. I think they have hit the playoffs as less than a top team, although they're still my favorites to make it out of the NFC. A lot of pressure on Josh Allen because of who he is, because of the fact that the other top quarterbacks are not there, and because, year after year, the opportunities dwindle for him to take his team to the Super Bowl. Can he do that this year, despite the fact there are some issues with the Bills, especially on defense? Rams go up against the Panthers, a team that has a losing record, a team that really doesn't belong in the playoffs, but a team that has already beaten the Rams this year. And in a game where Stafford, who is going to win the MVP, turned the ball over 3 times. He had a pick six, he had 2 interceptions, he had a fumble lost, so he had 3 turnovers, and remember, he only had 11 turnovers for the season. He had 46 touchdowns and 11 turnovers, and 3 of them came against Carolina. So that's gotta give Carolina and their defense and their defensive, back coach is getting a lot of play because of that. But Adams will return. They have the best wide receiver in the league in Nakua. They have the best tandem with him and Adams, especially Adams in the red zone, and one of the 2 superior quarterbacks in the situation. There's only 2 quarterbacks that have everything, that have experience, that have have done it, and have the experience. Mays had a great year. He doesn't have postseason experience. Guys have been up and down. Love's been up and down. Purdy's got experience, but he's been up and down. Obviously, Josh has been, Sam Donald has been up and down. There are a lot of issues with a lot of these quarterbacks, either in terms of overall experience or in terms of how dependable they will be in the postseason. We open with the Rams and Carolina. Why? Because that's the weakest TV game. That's why it's there at the 4 o'clock. You always can know which team is going to carry the 4 o'clock Saturday slot in the playoffs. Uh, Carolina, whoever came out of that division was going to carry it. You weren't going to get carried out with Pittsburgh because of the fact that despite they're in the 4-5, they have Aaron Rodgers. They have the mighty Steeler defense. They're home. They're an attractive team, no question, and they will anchor the coverage with Houston, a 3-point favorite at Pittsburgh, and the idea of whether or not the Houston defense, which is the best in football, and not just good in terms of what it has at the edges with Hunter and with Anderson, but the fact that it has talent throughout the entire ranks of the defense, which makes it a very, very hard chore for Aaron Rodgers. And watching Aaron Rodgers perform in this postseason and under this duress will be fascinating. It really will. I'm looking forward to it in a very big way. As I said, the Rams, who were the best team I thought in the NFC and went 12-5 and really should have lost maybe one game. They gave away 4 games. Packers go up against the Bears. The Bears are not a great team, but they've played well down the stretch of games. They have clearly a very cocky head coach. And there's a lot going on now with LaFleur. Despite LaFleur's record, there's a lot of thoughts that he could be leaving the Packers with a loss in this game. Now, Love's coming off the concussion. His ability to throw the deep ball makes them very dangerous despite their injuries. Yes, they have incredible injuries in this game. Bears a slight favorite. Very interesting game. That's a Saturday primetime game. And then the Bills and Jags will start it early Sunday. The one thing about the Jags are they ahead of schedule? Absolutely. You got a coach in Liam Cohen who takes over a team that lost 12 games and wins 13. That's an incredible performance. I've always been a Trevor Lawrence guy. A lot of people were down on him. They were wrong. Their field goal kicker is a fascinating weapon. He kicked 66 and 67 yarders late in the season. And when you realize that you kick the ball back forget kicking out of bounds, you kick the ball back in the end zone. You get the ball on the 35-yard line. With him, you're talking about 1 first down and you got a field goal. That rule has to be changed. Has to be changed. That's ridiculous. And he becomes an incredible weapon, especially late in games. And the one thing I would say about Jacksonville here is it's easy to like Buffalo. It's easy to like Buffalo in a tight game. It's easy to like their quarterback. But Jacksonville is going to play this fast and loose. They're going to attack defensively. They're going to attack offensively. They don't have a great running game. They do have a good defense. They do have a defense that takes the ball away, and they do have a quarterback who can make any throw. They're going to play fast and loose. They might lose, but I don't think they will be timid in this game. Niners Trent Williams is an enormous factor. If I find out Trent Williams is not playing, I would never pick the Lions ever. Eagles look like they could have Lane Johnson back. That gives them a big, big plus. But the Eagle offense is so erratic. Niner defense so erratic. It was absolutely pounded by the Seattle running game last week. Um, Chargers all banged up. Harbaugh did a great job getting them to the postseason, and now they get a Pat team which has to prove that they're ready for this kind of showing. Clearly, May's had a terrific year. Clearly, Vrabel gives them leadership, and they have plenty of weapons. But are they ready to win the big game? Remains to be seen. It's going to be very interesting. That's the Sunday night game with the Chargers and the Pats. And then Houston and Pittsburgh. And I'm surprised how many people think Houston's just going to run all over Pittsburgh in this game, kill them with their defense, beat Rodgers up, take away Rodgers' ability to stand in and throw the ball, put a lot of pressure on him. They will put pressure on him. He'll have to use his backs, Gainwell and Warren, to chip the edge pass rushes. Not all the time, but sometimes. And how they attack and what pressure they put on Rodgers and how much they can have Rodgers get rid of the ball. And Metcalf being back is a big positive. I mean, he made his own bed there, but he was a big loss. They survived that. Now they get him back, and that makes a big difference. I have a sneaking suspicion that Pittsburgh's going to win that game. I just have had it all week. I'm I know why people like Houston. What I don't like about Houston is I don't like their offense. I don't like their offensive coaching in big spots. I've seen them completely unravel at quarterback and on the offensive coaching staff, and that scares me, especially against the Pittsburgh defense that can do what it does with Hayward and Watt and with the people that it has, especially in that building where they're waving Emerald towels and they believe in defensive magic. I think that's a low-scoring game, and I think Rodgers can make just enough throws to win that game as a 3-point underdog. I like the Steelers in that game. I think the hardest game to figure on the weekend is the Packers and the Bears. I think the second hardest is the Bills and the Jaguars. I'm leaning towards the Bills. The Packers, Bears, I'm leaning towards the Packers, but I admit that game, I don't know what to expect out of Love. I don't know whether Love is healthy. I don't know how they can compensate. I don't know what's going on with the coaching staff there. There's a lot of things. The Bears' ability late in the game to make plays, and they've done that all year. They come off a very poor performance. Maybe they didn't want to show Green Bay anything. It could be a distinct possibility. So it's an interesting wild card weekend. For those of you interested in the college games, Miami and Ole Miss is as even a game as you could want. And then Indiana and Oregon. I have respect for Oregon. I have respect for the talent Oregon has, their depth of talent throughout the lineup, everything they bring to the table. But I think Indiana is the best team. I think they're the best coach team. I think they have a quarterback who understands what his role is and knows how to make plays when the game's on the line. And I think Indiana is the best team. It's tough to beat a good team twice in any year, no question about it. But I think they'll beat them. The Miami game, I think Miami has the better team, but I think the Ole Miss quarterback has a little bit of magic to him. Matter of fact, he did some things in that last game that I haven't seen done on a quarterback in college in a long, long time, which would make me think and I love the story of rooting for them. I rooted for them last week. I'll be rooting openly for them again because you know what? It's just you couldn't have a bigger villain than Kiffin, and you couldn't have an easier team to root for than what's going on with Ole Miss in this chaotic college football situation or just collegiate situation. Not that basketball's any better. These couple of weekends in the NFL are tremendous. No question, they're the best weekends of the year. When you get the drama of all these games, usually well-matched games. All right, the Rams are a 10.5 point favorite, but, they deserve to be that. But Packers and Bears, Bills and Jaguars, Niners and Eagles, even the Chargers and Pats and Houston and Pittsburgh, these games are all close. And this year, when you line up the quarterbacks and there's no Mahomes and there's no Burrow and there's no Lamar, you do have Allen, you do have Stafford, you do have guys who had wonderful years like May. You do have guys who have had big histories in the postseason, like Hurts. You know what kind of talent Love has. And then you got the guys that you're wondering about. You're wondering about Purdy. You're wondering about Stroud. You're wondering about Sam. Can Young do anything, or is he just going to be in over his head? And how about the pressure on Josh Allen this year? He doesn't have a great team. They're not a they're not a well-balanced machine. They can run the football. Cook's as underrated a player as there is in the league. We know they can run the football on anyone. We know that they'll move the football in big spots on anyone, but they're not good defensively. And we've seen them look awful at times. We've even seen Allen look very vulnerable at times this year. They don't have great wideouts. Can they make the big play when they have to? And think about it. Should he lose a tight game? And he's not gonna be losing it to Kansas City and Mahomes, or he's not gonna be losing it to Lamar and the Ravens, and he's not gonna be losing it to the talent that Burrow has in Cincinnati. It's gonna put a lot of pressure on Allen. Is this the year? The years are dwindling down for him. They're not gonna be there forever. Is this the year? That's clearly one of the themes that is carried into this postseason in what has been a very different injury-plagued, very different NFL season. From now until January 15th, BetRivers is giving you a $10 bonus bet to use on any plus money parlay or bet. Enter the bonus code Francesa26 in your BetRivers app, and you'll instantly get $10 to use on a wager of plus 100 or longer odds. That's code again, Francesa26. Go to the BetRivers app and claim your bonus bet before January 15th. Must be 21. Eligible customers only. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. So check that out as we head into the postseason. 6 big NFL games. The one seed sitting and waiting for the divisional playoff weekend, which most people would tell you because of the matchups and because of the fact that the one seeds jump into action, that is probably the premier week of the entire playoffs, but this one's exciting also. Saturday in the 4 o'clock slot. Then in prime time, the Packers and the Bears, hated rivals, coaches who can't stand each other, although Ben Johnson's building up a lot of that in the league right now. And then the Bills and the Jags to start off a triple header on Sunday, the Niners and the Eagles. Lane Johnson, is he healthy? Trent Williams, is he healthy? How much can you expect out of this banged up Niner team that has been banged up all year? Chargers, miracle even to get there this year. Lost so many people on the offensive line, on the defensive line, running back, so many key people going down, and Harbaugh keeping them afloat. And Herbert was coming off that awful playoff game last year. Now the Pats with May. Is he going to prove that the postseason for the once mighty Pats, the rekindling of the Pat franchise, that it's arrived led by a guy who was part of that in Vrabel? Is that gonna be the snap of the fingers where the Pats are the Pats again? Or are they gonna struggle at home, and then people are gonna say, "Look, that regular season was against teams they could beat and wasn't what it proved to be." They'll say that in Denver if they lose. They'll say that in New England if they lose. They'll say it about Knicks. They'll say it about May. That's what happens when you get to the postseason. It's time to produce. If you produce in the regular season, produce. If you have produced in the past in the postseason, produce again. If you are the big horse, then carry the load. If you're the MVP, then carry the load. That's the pressures that are unlike anything that you face anywhere else in the NFL. And that starts tomorrow. Well, starts, I should say, Saturday morning or Saturday at 4 o'clock, if you were talking about Eastern time with the Rams and Carolina. Fascinating stuff, especially on Allen. You know, it's funny. A month ago, I would have thought the Rams were really easy for the Super Bowl out of the NFC, but something's gone missing for them when they try to close out games. Has their superb head coach, and he is that, has he solved all that? Let's see if he has. He usually finds the answer when he needs to find the answer. That's what makes him such a special head coach. And I do think he is a very special head coach. Is it a different year? Yeah, it's a different year without having the Ravens here. It's a different year without having Andy Reid here and Mahomes here and not having those guys there. I mean, we've gotten so used to Kansas City year after year after year, and now they're gone. And frankly, I'll miss them. I admit that. I got very used to Kansas City. So it's a very different year from that standpoint. And I know for you fans, always a very special time. So enjoy. We'll see you later.